greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. The phone lines have just opened up, and you may call by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. If you'd like to hear the program on the replay in its entirety, you can do so by going to facebook.com/talktainment. And then you can do this. To watch the live broadcast of the compensatory concept, go to YouTube and type in the word Talktainment. Hit the space bar and type in the word radio, and then scroll down to Talktainment number 2, live on YouTube, and watch the live broadcast. And while you are there, hit the like button and the subscribe button, and we would really appreciate that. Today's program is entitled a quote by Malcolm X, "The chickens have come home to roost. Why are white people killing white people in the system of racism, which is white supremacy?" On the line to answer that and to answer all questions that you may have is the author of the book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, Mr. Neely Fuller. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, before we jump into the subject for today, I got an email from a brother, or Gmail rather, from a brother in England, Anthony McKeon, and he wrote this. He says, Dear Mr. Fuller, I believe that the final stage of white supremacy in my assessment is the, quote, perfection stage, end of quote, when non-whites think, speak, and act as if racism, white supremacy no longer exists, or it is insignificant in daily life. This manner of thought, speech, and action from non-white people will be pleasing to white supremacists and non-racist whites because it will not require them to do anything to replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice. In 2018, Mr. Fuller, we have reached a cross point in history when the smart white supremacists want to usher in this stage in record speed before too many non-white and white people become wise to their scheming. Mr. Fuller, I would appreciate your views, please.
Well, there's quite a few things that were said there, but what's the core of what was being said? The focus is, you mean, what is the question, what is it that white people plan to do with the system of white supremacy?
He mentioned that he says in his assessment, he talked about the perfection stage when non-whites think, speak, and act as if racism, white supremacy no longer exists, or it is insignificant in daily life.
I don't get the essence of the question.
He says this manner of thought, speech, and action from non-white people will be pleasing to white supremacists and non-racist whites because it will not require them to do anything to replace the system of white supremacy. Does that help any more?
Maybe I'm not hearing you clearly. I mean, about what is being said.
Well, he says that basically I'm getting the perfection stage. He says it's almost to the point where the white supremacists have got this perfection stage in place now, almost unrecognizable that it is still a racist thing.
Are they in the refinement stage? Is that what is being said?
Okay, you can go there. Is it in the refinement stage? Okay.
Yes. Well, yes, they're trying to stay in the refinement stage, but that's only a segment of the white supremacist system. The white supremacists have always argued among themselves they have actually had fights among themselves about whether to try to go in the refinement stage and stay there, or whether to swing back and forth every now and then, depending on conditions, or whether to just go with the hammer and the fist and just beat down black people wherever they find them, and just go the brutality way, nonstop, without trying to put any sugar coating on it or whatnot. But the refined white supremacists have always, down through history, said, no, that's not the best way. If you're thinking long range, it's not the best way to keep people under your thumb. It's not the best way to go about mistreating people on a long-term basis. The best way to do that is to sugarcoat everything that you do, to mistreat them, but make it look like it's not mistreatment, and put it in simple terms. Mistreat people, but make it look like it's not mistreatment. Make them enjoy the mistreatment so that they don't even recognize it as being mistreatment, and keep it in that stage. And so the white supremacists have, for some time, argued back and forth about whether that is the best way, because they say, well, you have to give up too much to do that. I mean, you reach a point where you have to, you just have to go back and be brutal and whatnot, and just stay in that range. So those two factions have always argued among themselves about the best way to do it. Because some say that, they argue among themselves. Some say that it's just use brute force, and because that's clean, that's neat, that's cheaper, really. And the refined white supremacists say, no, it's not cheaper, because it means that you got to use brute force every day, all the time, and you got to do it everywhere, and you have to be on the alert all the time. That is real expensive, just like in any gangster operation. The Godfather model, Salazzo saying to Tom Hagen, the lawyer, blood is a big expense, Tom. I don't like violence because it's a big expense. The violence itself is okay, but it's a big expense. I mean, it's bad for business, and you can't do business just being violent all the time. It's best to have a smooth, sugar-coated operation where everybody's reasonably satisfied with the status quo. Keep it that way, as best you can.
When has it not been violent or brutal?
Well, that's just it. See, and that's why I said you have those three factions. You have a faction in between that says, well, you have to do some of both. Every now and then, these people get out of line. Just like you got running a horse stable or anything. I mean, every now and then, the horses try to get loose. All right? You're running a horse stable business. I mean, you got your horses in what they call a corral. Horses and cows. But every now and then, the cows make a break for it. They go for the fence. Start knocking the fence down, all like that. So you have to kind of beat them in place. You beat the horses back in place. You send the cowboys out. You rope them and whatnot. That's what the ropes are for. And you kind of steer them. I mean, you get the horses. If you're herding cows, you use the horses, encircle the cows and send them back into the corral when they break out every now and then. And then everything is back, and you get some hay, and you pacify them, and you keep them in that area. And every now and then, though, you have to be a little rough with them. And you make sure that you got them all neatly branded, which is a painful process sometimes. But to make sure that if they do kind of get away, you can always track them down and say, hey, this is my horse. This is my cow. They got my brand on them. They got my name on them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just the way that works. But they always kind of, like in any business, you have business partners that have a dispute among themselves about how the business is run. The system of white supremacy worldwide is a business, and the victims of racism should understand that. It's not about how somebody feels. It's a business, and that's the core of it.
Yes, sir. It's a business. Okay, we're going to take a phone call here as soon as we can get it together here. What line are we going to do? Line number one? Okay, line number one, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Hello, hello, Dr. Neely Fuller. I'm calling from South American country of Ecuador, from the coastal city of Guayaquil. My name is Luis Castro. I'm a student of your compensatory code, and I can attest that it's very, very hard to stay on code with white supremacy. My question, sir, I understand the system of white supremacy is put together by people, and that anything put together by people can be taken apart by people. Where's the will and the skill to take it apart? Last week, you commented Black history for you was all history before and after your current time. Does it not follow logically that we should define and critique the history of white supremacy specifically so as to know how to dismantle it? Thank you.
Did you understand the question, Mr. Fuller?
No.
Wow.
I didn't hear the question.
And he hung up too.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're still here? Oh, good. Could you?
I hear a lot of echoing, so that's one difficulty that I'm having here.
Okay. Are you still hearing the echo?
Somewhat.
Okay, just a little bit. Okay, sir, could you repeat that question and kind of condense it so that Mr. Fuller can properly address it?
Sure, no problem. A few weeks ago, you said that the system of white supremacy was put together by people and can be taken apart by people. So, and then just last week you said that Black history was all history before and after your current time. So, shouldn't we know specifically what the history of white supremacy is so that we can know how to dismantle it?
Should we know what white supremacy is?
The history
is that
of
the
white
question?
supremacy.
Go ahead, sir. Shouldn't we know what now about the history of white?
The history of white supremacy, namely Black history.
Oh, you have to know history, in order to know what you're dealing with. Yes, that's the whole purpose. History is anything that happened 1 second ago, all right? Or it's anything that happened 40 trillion years ago. It depends on why study history. That's the question. Why study history? And I say that if you're trying to solve a problem, you study just enough history to solve the problem. That's the way we should look at it. We just don't study history just to be studying history. History is the whole past. And what is the past? The past is everything that happened before the beginning of time and since. That's the past. So you say, well, you're going to study everything, everybody who had breakfast 40 trillion years ago, and what they had for breakfast, each and every person. That's history. So you're going to study that? Well, now you say, well, you can start out trying to do that, but in order to accomplish what? See, the whole purpose for doing anything is to try to accomplish something. So when I was taught history, I wasn't taught the reason that I was studying history. I was just saying, well, let's just study the past. Just study the past. Study the past. Study, all the things that people did in the past. Well, study what past? Whose past? In order to do what? That's the main question. What are you going to do with it now that you got it? Now that you got it all in your head, what can you do with it? What can you do with what you learned about what happened 15 minutes ago? That's what it comes down to. You say, well, it's important to know what happened down the hall 15 minutes ago. Well, why is it important? Why do you have to know what somebody said on the elevator this morning? That's history. Do you need to know what the conversations were on every elevator in New York City this morning? Who said what to whom? Well, you say, well, somebody might have said something that you need to know. It had to do with the stock market. Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. See, that's getting focus on what you're studying. Lots of elevators in New York City. Lots of people get on and off elevators having conversations back and forth, and sometimes texting while they're doing it. You want to know what every text was in between 9 o'clock, between 6 o'clock and 7:30? What every conversation was on a text message on an elevator in the city of New York? That is history. That actually happened. You know, lots of people did it. So which one of those text messages should you pick out to study? All of them? Some of them? In order to do what? See, it always comes down to in order to do what? What is it that you need to know in order to do what? So that's what it comes down to about history. And one thing that black people should never use history for, and that is to brag. And there's a logical reason for that that's right in your face. Look at the shape we're in now. So we don't have bragging rights. We're prisoners of war. The black people of this planet and the system of white supremacy are now, in 2018, prisoners of war. We have no bragging rights at all. Studying, I don't care what we did 10 million years ago or 10 seconds ago. We're not in position to brag. We're only in position to try to get out of this prison, try to dismantle the prison, really, and replace it with a better system than the system of government we have here in the world now. We come under that system of government. It is the corrupt system of government. It's a system of government that never should have existed in the first place. It's called the system of white supremacy. That is the government of the world right now when it comes to non-white people. Now, that system got in place on account of mistakes that were made in history. There's no way around that. Mistakes by whom? By the people who became victims of it. That's how you become a victim. You make mistakes.
Wow. TalkTimeAtRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's a couple I'd like to share with you. Number one, this is Libby. Libby Rand is the host, and she gives you all the information that you could want, and maybe some that you don't even or may not be aware of in the area of holistic living. And also, Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Every other week. We had a show last night, and we'll have one again in 2 weeks. But the show hits on sports topics, and also we try to feature guests from various fields. On all these shows, or these two particular shows, are exclusive to TalkTimeAtRadio.com, and all you have to do is go to the TalkTimeAtRadio.com homepage and then click on for programs for the scheduled times. That's from Talk Team at Radio, radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our subject today is the chickens have come home to roost, coined by Malcolm X. In relationship to what has been going on now, which is why whites are killing whites in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. To get in contact with the show, you could do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7MrBobby@gmail.com. If you want to hear the show in its entirety, you can go to Facebook.com/Talktainment. And if you want to see and hear the show, all you have to do is go to YouTube and then type in the word Talktainment, hit the space bar and type in the word radio, and then scroll down to Talktainment #2 live on YouTube, and you can watch the broadcast. All righty. And while you're there, hit the like and share button. Okay, Mr. Fuller, in the news that's been happening of recent, there's been a school shooting. Of course, this is in the system of racism and white supremacy. They got the shooter, who happened to be white, and there's been numerous shootings all across the United States. The paper that I do not have in front of me indicate in the last 35 years there's been 91 shootings, whites killing whites. What does the code have to say about that?
What I just covered earlier, the whites, to the extent that, see that, people have always killed people. I mean, even back, people say in Bible times and whatnot, people kill people. All kinds of reasons, whatnot. But in the system of white supremacy, I gave the gangster frame of reference because the system of racism is a gangster operation. So they had, it's not school shootings. You had, prior to that, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, there was a thing called a quote-unquote civil war. Well, there's no such thing as a civilized war, all right, in the first place. And some people call it the war between the states. Well, what state? What is a state? A state is nothing but a person. Each person is a state of being. That's in the code book, by definition. A state, S-T-A-T-E, is a person. One person is a state. So if one person is fighting another or killing another, that's one state killing another state. That's one person killing another person. Okay? About what? Well, about whatever the killing is about. So, gangsters, the system of white supremacy is a gangster operation. So every now and then, gangsters say, I don't like the way that you are running the business. You're bad for the business, the way you're going about doing it. And the other gangster says, well, I'm going to continue to do it this way because it works best for me. And the other gangster says, yes, but it's not working best for me and my associates. So they go back and forth, just like the Corleones and the Tatayas and the Barzinas. I mean, they use the Godfather movie format. And they have conferences, they sit down and they talk, try to talk it out. And if it's not resolved, then they start slaughtering each other. All right? But now the people, you might say, using the Godfather model, they'll say, well, now why this fight we got is going on, it's very expensive because one thing, I mean, those black people up in Harlem that we're making our money off of in the numbers racket and whatnot, they're just playing, games with part of our operation. But we got to settle this business so we can get back and put the foot on them and exploit them to the hilt, and don't let them get the idea that, that they can be a part of the gangster operation that we're running because they're supposed to be the victims of the gangster operation. And so you fast forward that to this day, the drugs and all like that, that's supposed to be the black economy, all right? But the white supremacists are supposed to be making the money off of it. And also the prison industry and whatnot, the white supremacists make money off of that. I mean, somebody's making money off of food and, and shelter for the prisoners. Just keep packing them in there. Just, set up some little schools there where we don't guarantee that we don't teach them anything that they can use. The teachers have to, spend all their time keeping order because all the young black males have been taught to be gangsters. So they're sitting in school trying to figure out how they can be gangsters, not paying attention much of anything else except chasing the girls, those who still like girls. And then you teach the ones who are studious, the black male who is called a nerd, we'll handle him by doing what in the schools? Well, we'll handle him by saying that he's real studious and he wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, something like that. But, and so we might let him be that because, we got to have black doctors, you got to have black lawyers, but he will also be effeminized, all right? Lead him in the direction that if he's going to be studious, if he's going to be a serious person and have a brain, well, he can at least he's not going to be a real man. He's going to be a eunuch.
Okay, but what does that have to do with white people killing white people?
That has to do with what I just said. It's a gangster operation. If you used it, that's why I always use that format. Sometimes people may get annoyed with it. But if you've seen the movie The Godfather, or if you have even read anything about gangsterism, the system of white supremacy works on a gangster principle because it's a gangster operation. Gangsters kill each other about the, turf, about who's going to get what, about dividing up the spoils. I mean, they have always done this. And the so-called Civil War in the Northwestern Hemisphere, it wasn't about whether or not somebody liked the slaves or didn't like the slaves, or liked slavery or didn't like slavery. I mean, there's a general consensus that all down through history, people didn't particularly, it wasn't a business of whether or not someone liked their slaves and say, do something for the slaves. No, you're not doing anything for the slaves. You're fighting among each other about who's going to have the most slaves, who's going to get the most profits out of the slaves. That when they say there was a war between the North and the South, that was a gangster dispute.
Okay.
There was some people saying, we are not getting a cut of the operation.
Okay.
You're cutting us out of the money. I mean, and we're not going to stand for it.
Okay. If what you say is correct, then why children? Why school children? Because of the criminal organization killing kids?
Same thing. Anytime you say that killing is okay, all kinds of people pick up that message, including people who are mentally unstable. So people just start, anybody who gets in the range of a gun, and you have glorified killing, look at every movie, look at every book that's written. I mean, that's supposed to be a best-selling novel. All of the long-running TV shows, Murder, She Wrote, I mean, in the Northwestern Hemisphere. You make fun out of killing. Anytime you make fun out of killing, I was taught, and I'm a black person, but I was taught that killing is fun. I was taught that in school, not just in the comic books. I was taught that in school.
Okay.
That being a hero means you have to be a killer.
Okay.
Not a plumber.
All right.
Not a bricklayer.
Okay, we got to leave that with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our topic today is a quote by Malcolm X, the late Malcolm X. The chickens have come home to roost. Why are white people killing white people? To get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. That's BOBBY at gmail.com. You can also hear the show in its entirety by going to facebook.com/talktainment. And you can review the show. And you can also do this. You can watch the show live, the compensatory concept. Go to YouTube, type in the word talktainment. Hit the space bar, then type in the word radio. Then scroll down to talktainment number 2, live on YouTube, and watch the broadcast live. While you're there, hit the subscribe button and the like button, and you'll be there. We have a phone call on the line. What line are we on? Line number 1? Okay. Line number 1, thank you for being so patient. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Hello. My name is Eric Goodrum. How are you doing?
Yes, Eric.
Yes. My question is for Mr. Fuller. I'm a student of Mr. Fuller in the compensatory code, and my question is, actually I got a couple questions. My first question is concerning VGQ. To my understanding of VGQ is you're not supposed to really go against anything that another non-white person says concerning racism, white supremacy. My question for Mr. Fuller concerning this issue is, what if a non-white person is giving advice to other non-white people that are harming them or causing them to do things that is not in their best interest? Are we supposed to just stand by and say that person is saying what they said and they're doing what they do as BGQ states in the code, or should we seek correctness, as Mr. Fuller said? That's my first question. Thank you.
Yes, that's the way it's supposed to work. VGQ means you can't say that anybody shouldn't be saying what they are saying. You just simply say what you have to say. See, that's the whole key. Let everybody talk, because people ultimately have to make up their own minds anyway, regardless of what anybody says. And it's excellent for people to hear everybody's view. Everybody's view, including white people's view, for sure. The view of white people. Anything that white people want to say about race, I mean, listen to it. Don't try to stop them from saying it. Listen to it. Because
even if people are harming themselves, what if people are listening to the bad message? And let's just say a black person is saying, in order to defeat white supremacy, all black people should go and cut their heads off. Should we not go and tell people, hey, don't go get in that line and cut your head off? I mean, you do have families that are non-white people.
Yes,
I mean,
but the key is,
say what they say?
In answer to the question, the key is, on the VGQ, everybody should give their point of view. You don't silence anybody. See, that's the way that happens. All right? Now, one black person will say, well, yes, what every black person should do right now to settle the race issue is go out and commit suicide. Every black person on the planet. Now, a black person can say that. But then, the other black person standing next to him, if I'm standing next to him, I'll say, well, can I speak? I got a better suggestion. No. Let's get rid of the system of white supremacy and replace it with a system of justice. Don't go out and kill yourself in the next 5 minutes. Don't do that. That's what I'm saying. Now, that causes what? The black people who are listening, they have to make a decision. Now, some black person might say, well, I go with what that first guy said. I ain't going to be a part of this system, and if I ain't here, I ain't a part of the system. So I'm going to cut my throat right now. Well, the black person does that. See, we're all equal prisoners of war. All prisoners of war are equal. There's no such thing as big ones and little ones. You can't dictate to the other person. You can only give them what's on your mind, your idea about the best way to handle your prisoner situation. All right? That's
understood.
That's what VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Every victim, VGQ means Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Every victim of white supremacy is guaranteed the qualification to say whatever he or she chooses to say about his or her victimization. She's a victim. He's a victim. So they can say what they want to about their victimization. And to start arguing with them, it's just going to be a prison yard argument, because neither one of the persons has power over the other. It's the prison warden who has power over all of them. So it's logical. You just give your viewpoint as a fellow prisoner. So, one fellow prisoner might say, I'm going for the wall today. I'm going, I know it's a machine gun in that tower, and I know it's razor wire on top of that wall. But I'm going for the wall. I'm just going to make a break for it. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going for it. Now, the other prisoner might say, well, I'm not going to do that, and I wouldn't advise you to do that. And the other prisoner says, well, I don't care what you say. You're not my boss. So that prisoner, 5 minutes later, makes a break for the wall and gets tangled up in the razor wire. The razor wire starts cutting that person to pieces, which is what razor wire does, and the machine guns open up. And the person is just torn to pieces by the razor wire and the machine gun bullets. All right? End of that story. Now, the other prisoners look at that and say, well, I think I'm going to try that too. All right? But most prisoners will look at that and say, no, I think I better think this through. I want out of here, but I don't think I'm going to follow that example. And that's the way it should work. All right? You can tell the person what you think, but the person make up his or her own mind.
Correct. What's your second question, sir?
My last question, sir, is sticking with the topic of why are white people killing white people. Can Mr. Fuller explain or give his explanation on, like, the current shootings that went on in the high school? Can he give his explanation on why the white supremacists are studying or basically they're putting more emphasis on gun control rather than that student being a white supremacist? And I'll listen to the answer off the air. Thank you a lot, Mr. Fuller, and I will appreciate it if you would come to Cleveland, Ohio, and speak sometime soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Well, here again, I'll say what I said before. Every now and then, just like, remember someone who may have seen the movie Godfather again, there was a character named Pete Clemenza who was teaching Michael how to shoot a revolver in the basement. And they were doing target practice, and he was showing them how to pull the trigger and all like that. And then he went on to tell about what this was really all about. He said, we all work together. I mean, the different families, the crime families here in New York City. He said, but every now and then, it's a lot of bad blood. He said every 10, 15 years, we have to clean out the bad blood, which means that somebody becomes disgruntled about they're not getting their cut. Now, it's the same way with the racist system. Every now and then, the white supremacists become disgusted with each other. They like the way the business is being run. Lots of people say, lots of people that believe in white supremacy said that, you're white just like me, but you're going to have this black president, a black person being president named Obama, because the only way that President Barack Obama could have become President Barack Obama is that a lot of white people voted for President Barack Obama. Now, a lot of other white people said, well, you're going to set some type of precedent that we're not going to be able to live down if you do that. So you don't ever want to have a black president. Not ever. I mean, you rig the election or do whatever. And other white people say, well, look, you had a president of South Africa named Nelson Mandela. All right? This is the wave of the future. We're going to have quite a few black people with name recognition and with fancy titles. Said, but the key is, don't give them any power. Don't let them do anything. Let them strut around, make fancy speeches, have a lot of photo ops, get their picture taken, spread their picture all over the walls everywhere. I mean, make all of the black people think that they got some power because they got a black president or a black queen or a black king or whatever. And, give them lots of publicity, lots of creature comforts, make them real comfortable, and use them to showcase, all right? Because that's the wave of the future. We're going to have a lot of showcase black people, but the majority of black people are going to keep suffering like they always have. Keep them that way. Now, the other viewpoint of the same bunch of white people who are practicing white supremacy, not talking about all white people, but talking about the two factions in the gangster operation, who are the smartest and most powerful, by the way. But they have these arguments with each other. They say, no, you can't set that example, because it'll be, next thing you know, you'll have too many of them wanting to be somebody. We got a lot of them now that never want to be anybody. They just want to be dead by the time they are 18, and they join little gangs and whatnot so they can kill each other off, because they don't even want to be here. Keep them that way, all right? And they say, well, yeah, that'll work for a while, but we're thinking 100 years down the road. We're thinking 1,000 years down the road. We got to have a lot of showcase black people up front, just enough to fool the rest of them into thinking that they have power that they don't have. So it's like Clemenza telling young Michael, every now and then, we got to have a war among ourselves, and whomever comes out, I mean, that's the way our gangster operation is going to work. But every now and then we're going to have these disagreements, and we're going to kill each other. But we can't let it go on too long, because just like some of the callers in the program were saying, hey, this thing will become unraveled altogether, and won't nobody be in business, all right? So, we'll have this little war, and it'll go on for a few weeks or a few months, and maybe a couple of years, but eventually we'll all come to the table, like they always do, just like in the movie The Godfather. Don Corleone said, well, Santina's dead. They killed him out there on the causeway. That's my son, who was running most of the operations. He's the guy who knows the streets and all like that. He's dead now, so this war ends. This conflict we are having right now ends. Let's come to the table. Let's call all the Tatalias and the Barzinas and all the heads of the families from Kansas City, and we're going to talk about how we're going to handle these black people up in Harlem. All right? But we're going to do it around the table. We're not going to do it out in the streets with this gunfire. It's bad for business. Mm-hmm. We can't keep on like this. Okay. That's all it is. Look at that movie, Godfather 1, and you got it all right there.
Okay. Before we take this phone call, Mr. Fuller, we need you to just speak to your book just for a few minutes so we can get this phone call in. Go ahead.
Yes. Go to producejustice.com. On it, that's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the textbook, the basic textbook for victims of white supremacy, called the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code Revised Edition. And then there's also an additional book called the Compensatory Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide. And that's in addition to the basic book. But go to producejustice.com, and the book, both of the volumes, are directed to the individual person about what he or she can do on a daily basis that will directly or indirectly help to replace the system of white supremacy, in my opinion, that is, strictly my opinion, with the system of justice. Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice by what a black person does, a non-white person anywhere on the planet, can do as an individual person operating on a day-to-day level without ever having to ask anybody anything about what to do about anything. Just go to the book and get some guidance from there, and then go from there as an individual person. And if you get enough people doing it, that's the concept that I'm trying to put out. Okay. You get enough individual people solving problems, which is what you're really doing, on a daily basis, then all problems will be solved, because the individual person is solving his or her own problem. So if each and every individual person can solve his or her own problem, the problem they're looking at every day, you can solve the problems of all people. In other words, each prisoner of war is able to figure out what to do in his or her own cell that will best help her or him to no longer be in that cell.
Yes, sir.
That's the concept.
Okay. So
producejustice.com. That's what you go to.
All righty. Let's go to the phone line number one. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. This is Brother Muko from Baltimore.
Yes, sir.
We do the compensatory constructive action discussions. We hold them one Saturday at Lake Clifton at about 12 noon. So if anybody listening, you want to come out here and discuss dismantling racism, come on out. I kind of have just a VGQ for Mr. Fuller and you today, and the audience. I share this sentiment like Mr. Fuller with wanting to dismantle the system, and I suggest that people take a look at the British colonial laws of the 17th century, which invented the term white people. Now, I've been doing some extensive research, and what I've come to find, just like a few others out here, is that the term or the word white in reference to a person's color was not even mentioned any time before the 1600s. You know, they actually made it a law to make white people white people. Because before that, they were running around calling themselves British, descendants of Britain. You know, they were calling themselves not white. They weren't even calling themselves Caucasian. And what came with these laws, what I've seen is privileges that came with these laws. And I'm talking about privileges that were made to a person of Britain descent or freedman descent, saying that, look, if you call yourself white, you get these privileges. So they weren't called white all the time. I think that if we want to dismantle this system, we have to look at the laws and eliminate those laws because they're still in place today.
Okay.
So that's just VGQ. And I called last week.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't hang up. I need to say something to you. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller. He mentioned VGQ. Your thoughts on that before we go ahead on?
Well, that comes under VGQ.
Yes.
I've heard that too, and I've heard many other things. I've heard some people say, and I say it on this program all the time, when I first started looking at white supremacy, and people started asking me, when did it begin? And I said, well, I don't know, but I know that it's here now. So I'm just looking at the mechanics of what to do about it now that we're dealing with it. But when you start talking about history, people have argued about it, so I don't even take part in that argument because it's an argument.
Mm-hmm.
See, and part of the code is you don't argue about anything. You can discuss. You can give viewpoints, but don't argue.
Don't argue.
Arguments don't produce anything.
Okay.
So what I have been told by different people, that racism, the origin of racism started in, mostly around 400 years ago, all right? And different people said it just broke out in different places, on an incremental basis. I don't know. I wasn't there. And other people said, no, it wasn't 400 years ago, it was 600 years ago, all right? And then there are other people that came along, and even in the 1960s, they were saying, no, these people have got no idea of how far back this goes. This goes back to the time of Julius Caesar and all like that. In the time of Jesus, they had white supremacy then. And they say, you're talking about 2,000 years. And then there are other people that came along, and this is in the 1960s. I was hearing these stories. They said, no, you're talking about 6,000 years.
Okay.
You're talking about 6,000 years, and that's a conservative figure. When white supremacy began, you're talking about 6,000 years. All of this other phony history in between is phony. You're talking about 6,000 years of white supremacy is what we have had.
Yeah.
There are people who are, said that they got documentation that, that they can go back and find, and dig in the ground and find artifacts that prove that and all that.
Yes, sir.
I simply say, I don't know.
Okay. All righty. Hey, Brother Muko,
sir.
Yeah, can you call me back after the show? I have to ask you a question. So I need to do
sure
it.
will.
I'll do it off air. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. All righty. Let's see here. Let's do this, okay. This is from the Gmails. This says, Mr. Fuller, greetings. He said, Mr. Fuller, another school shooting in the United States of America is not a surprise. Some people are calling the alleged shooter, quote, a teen, although he is 19 years of age. When anyone of color, 18 years of age or older, commits a crime, some people refer to them as either a black man or a black woman. Mr. Fuller, could this be a propaganda technique to obtain sympathy for whites and contempt for non-whites?
Well, there are some people who say that, so you can draw your own conclusions. Anything that a white supremacist has anything to do with has to do with giving strength to the system of white supremacy. That's the first thing you think about. I don't care what's happening. First thing you think about, is it in any way connected with race and our racism and our people of color? Direct directly or indirectly? Are they in any way involved? And if the answer is yes, according to the code, now here's where the code kicks in big time. I mean, directly. If non-white people are involved, either directly or indirectly, involved any kind of way, and it has an adverse effect on non-white people, directly or indirectly, the white supremacists are the usual suspects. You say that automatically. I mean, without even getting any further details. You don't need any further details. That's detail enough. Was a non-white person in any way harmed, directly or indirectly, in any area of activity? It don't have to be a killing. Doesn't have to be a killing. It can be in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex. Was a non-white person involved in any kind of way, and harm was done to that non-white person, period. If that's the question, because that should be the question, directly or indirectly, even hit by a stray bullet, then it's the fault of whom? The white supremacist collective. Every white supremacist on the planet is to blame for that, individually and collectively. Why? Because it came from the system of white supremacy. And this is the way counter-racist codification, counter-racist logic is supposed to always be until there's no more racism. That's automatic. Every white supremacist, if it was a non-white person in that school that stumped his toe running, the white supremacists are to blame. That's the way you look at it. Why? Because they are running all of non-white people's business on this planet. That's why. They are guilty, totally guilty, of all the mess, collectively. Why? Because collectively they are running the system. It takes all of them to run the system. They're to use, but you can't call them white supremacists. You can say that broadly, like I'm doing it right now. But on the individual level, if you say, well, is that shooter a white supremacist? Because he shot at some people who were non-white. He shot at some people of color. There was one or two of them in there that were running and whatnot. He was trying to shoot them.
But he shot white people, too.
Yes, but he is a racist suspect if he caused one non-white person to be injured.
Okay. All right.
He's a racist suspect if he's able to be a racist suspect anyway.
All right.
So that covers that anyway.
Okay, we got to leave it there. TalkToHim@radio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour here on TalkToHim@radio.com.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All righty. Welcome to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And you're listening to it on TalkTimidRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. Again, you're in touch with the compensatory concept, and this is radio the way it should be heard. If you'd like to get in contact with the show and the phone lines are now open, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. Also, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and I'll try to get to the message. Also, you can do this. You can go to facebook.com/talktainment to hear the entire show if you'd like to do so. And one last way, you can watch the show by going to YouTube, type in the word Talktainment, hit the space bar and then the word radio, and then scroll down to Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube, and you can watch the entire broadcast. While you're there, hit the subscribe button and the like button. And since this is the second hour, as you well know, this is what we call the donation hour. All the proceeds, monies that you send in, will be donated for the production of the second hour of the compensatory concept. Mr. Fuller and myself are not compensated by any monies that you send in. So it doesn't matter what the amount is, just make a donation. And there's a box there when you go to the home page, right under, I think, the phone number. Hit donate, any amount that you want to hit. Brian Gaston, Eric Williams, B.W. Gifts, Helen Nance, Don Michener, and Jay Lawson, I believe her name is, JL anyway, are some of the reoccurring sponsors. So we do thank you for your sponsorship. Today's program is entitled a track from Malcolm X, "The Chickens Have Come Home to Roost." Why are white people killing white people in the system of racism, which is white supremacy? Let's go to the Gmails. This comes all the way from England, Mr. Fuller. Mr. McKeon, he wrote this. He says, if the usual suspects, Mr. Fuller, can detract so many black people around the world with an imaginary African country called Wakanda in the new Black Panther movie, and make so many black people feel like superheroes despite our state on this planet, then imagine what the usual suspects will get black people to do, say, and think in a couple of months' time when Meghan Markle, a non-white female with a black mother, marries Prince Harry of the British royal family in a couple of months' time, and it will be televised all over the world. Mr. Fuller, I would appreciate your counter-racist views, please.
Anything that the white supremacists do, willfully and deliberately, is to give strength to the system of white supremacy. It doesn't make any difference what it looks like on the surface. That's counter-racist code. That's rock-solid code. You don't deviate from that if you believe in the concept of counter-racism. You never deviate from that, not for 1 second. Anything in a racist system, and that's the only system of government we have on the planet, all right? Anything that a white supremacist does in any area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, is to give strength to the system of white supremacy in one or more of those areas of activity. So if there's something sexual going on, like so-called, what they call incorrectly, interracial marriage, and the white supremacists have something to do with it, and presumably they have something to do with everything that a non-white person does, is to give strength to the system of white supremacy. That's all you have to remember. Here they go again. That's all you say. That's all you really need to say. Here we go again. Here we go again. All right, what are they going to do in the field of entertainment? Okay, they're doing this. They're making this kind of... Does the white supremacists have anything to do with it, directly or indirectly? And the answer is yes. All right, here we go again. Usual suspects giving strength to the system of white supremacy. All right. Well, is somebody going to get married? Is there going to be some kind of wedding? Well, does it involve a non-white person? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Well, does it involve directly or indirectly a white person who is a racist suspect, suspected of being a racist by any non-white person on the planet? Yes, it does. Then, hey, business as usual. It's going to give strength to the system of white supremacy. They don't do anything unless it's going to give strength to the system of white supremacy. I mean, that's why it's such a successful business, the most successful business that the world has ever seen in recorded history. Nothing has been more successful than that enterprise called the system of white supremacy. And that is why white supremacists don't do anything deliberately and willfully. Every now and then they make mistakes, but they correct their mistakes. History has shown that. They do that real fast. Every now and then they will make an error, all right? But boy, do they come to the table right quick and say, hey, we can't have our business come unravel. So this thing that we are doing now, I mean, it's bad for business.
Yes.
So we got to correct it.
Okay. All right, let's do this. Mr. Fuller, now you've made mention of this, the Godfather, at least 3 times in today's broadcast. So with respect to the Godfather, does this statement, the chickens have come home to roost, that Malcolm X made famous, I don't know if he wrote it, but the chickens have come home to roost, and he was subsequently murdered. Anyway, could that mean that the school shootings and any other shootings by white people, whites killing whites, could that indicate that their plan of white supremacy perhaps is backfiring, even though it is a business? White supremacy is a business. Could this be backfiring?
That's why I kept using the Godfather as an example. White people who are white supremacists kill each other.
Yes.
But they kill each other having squabbles about the best way to go about practicing white supremacy. And then every now and then you do have just something that happens that where a white person, on account of the whole system of racism is so crazy anyway.
Yes.
It's a crazy system. Crazy just means something that shouldn't be. That's all crazy is. When anybody's crazy, all you're really saying is they're in a state of mind that shouldn't exist. That state of mind shouldn't exist. So the entire system of racism makes everybody crazy, all right? But then some people who are racist go crazy and do something that's against the business itself, all right? So the craziness, just, like the chickens coming home to roost, but I always say that, hey, if it's done willfully and deliberately, usually when you examine it, the details of it, it's a white person who kills another white person, to make it explicit, in the system of white supremacy. Usually when you look at it for what it really is, it's that white person has become disgusted, not with the system of white supremacy, has become disgusted with not getting his or her share in the manner in which they think they're entitled to.
Wow.
Directly or indirectly, that's usually all it is. So they say, hey, I mean, you all making all this progress and whatnot, but I'm not getting my cut. I'm not getting what I think I'm entitled to. So you treat me like I'm an outsider. I'm a member of the family. I am a member of the family. We're in the crime family. We're supposed to be looking out for each other. Somebody's not looking out for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make a statement, even if it means killing somebody in the family. Family members kill each other sometimes.
Well, yes, that's true.
On account of they don't like the way that the family is being run. That's all it is. Very simple. It's not complicated at all. But the victims of the Corleones and the Tatalias and the Salazzos, the victims up in Harlem, if you use the Godfather format, they don't benefit from that squabble. They'll do for a short period of time while the squabble is going on. Santino said that, sitting at the table. He said the Negroes, he didn't use the word Negro.
I know.
He used the N-word.
Yes, sir.
He said, up in Harlem, they're driving around in Cadillacs on our money while we are having this battle going on. So we got to stop this fighting. We got to settle this dispute one way or another with the Tatalians, all right, so that we can get back to business and get our cut. Because, we're not collecting our money. They were running what? The numbers operation. So if you don't have a collector, because everybody's laying low, because all of the family members are fighting each other, squabbling with each other, so nobody's collecting the money. So the black people up in Harlem, because that was really based on a fact, in what you call gangster history, in that context, New York gangsters back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So whenever there's a gang war going on, the people who are part of it at the low end, they start making more money at the low end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Because nobody else can come out and collect nothing.
Mm-hmm.
All right? They're hiding from each other.
Yes. Now, what you just said, even though I don't quite understand it, but I can say this, which makes your statement correct. The Bible says that the love of money, not money, but the love of money is the root of all evil. So when you introduce money, the money component that the racists use, that makes your statement, in my opinion, very credible, because somewhere down the line, this thing is about money. Even though I don't see it, I don't understand why children, black or white, have to be killed, but I do see the money component, because the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil, not money. So the point you make or have just made, to me, in my opinion, is legitimate. Whether I see it or not, it's legitimate. So I do thank you, for that. We have a phone call? Yes, sir. What line? Line number one? Okay. Line number one, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good day to you and Brother Fuller, and I appreciate the work you all are doing. I got a dose of reality for the wise, the unwise. The more things change, the more they remain the same. The system of white supremacy put Barack Bush in, just like they put in Mr. Hitler, just like they put in Donna Hitler Mussolini dump. This is their thing. They run it. Don't no sheep ever run around thinking you picked some president to manage the worldwide system of white supremacy. That's buffoonery. Now, this violence going on, particularly if people call yourself black, you listen very carefully. This is all a set-up by the white supremacy. For black people to be exterminated here, they must create an atmosphere of things gone crazy. That is exactly what they're doing. Black people are saying, oh, they shooting white people in the school. Oh, they ain't got nothing to do with us. That's just what they want you to think. They want this to go over the world. What do you think people say in other parts of the world? They saying, man, what's going on in America? Man, all that crazy stuff going on. That is exactly what they want. Some of these stories you're going to hear about violence in Montana, Nevada, it didn't even happen. They control media. If they put on the media story, news story, next 5 minutes, a family of folk killed in Montana, police killed gunmen, and other news, you're going to go out and say, man, you hear what happened in Montana? 4 people killed in family. Never happened. They control media. We don't have nobody to go check out no darn story, what happened, who shot who. We don't control that. Now, here's the solution, people, that you need to think about. If you can get out of here, I can't tell you where to go. The only place I've been to is Vietnam. But if you can get out of here, and you got the money, you can get your grandchildren out of here, get out.
they are going to kill millions of black people. And a lot of these young black girls and boys, they're going to take them back to antebellum slavery. They're going to brutalize them, have them tied up, rape them, do what they want to do with them. Some of them they're going to bring into the Klan. They're going to raise them as white.
Wow.
Before white supremacy came along, that word, you had the Vikings. They went and did the same thing to people look like them. This has always been their conduct.
All right, my brother.
And when they ran up on darker-skinned people, that's when they come with that race mess. But these people had this same conduct against each other. That's what World War I for World War II. They wasn't against Hitler when he was doing that to the Jews. They got at Hitler when he wanted to conquer the world. They told Hitler, hold on here, cuz. You moving a little too fast here.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. You're right.
All right, people,
right,
think about
there.
what I said. If you can get out, get out.
All right. Thank you, my brother. All right. VGQ, let's do this. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's one I'd like to share with you. It's my show. It's called Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. And we have coming up on the show Chuck B. of the No Quotes brand. He's also been on Fatal Attraction as a private investigator. Minnesota Gophers assistant coach, Miss Nikki Lowry. She'll be a guest coming up. Author and writer, W. Lane Gary. And homeboy and musician Reginald Van Character will be from Virginia, will be on the Talking Sports from Mr. Bobby. The next show is March the 6th, so make sure that you tune in to Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. All those programs that we mentioned can be heard by going to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage. Click on programs, and there you see bios and all the information. That comes from TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are dealing with the subject that chickens have come home to roost, in particular, why whites are killing whites in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call. The numero 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com, if you'd like to get in contact that way. You can also rehear the program by going to facebook.com/talktainment. And then the last way that you can hear the show is simply go to the YouTube channel, click on, type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar and type in the word radio, and then scroll down to Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube, and there you go. Hit it right there, and hit the like and also the subscribe button. And because we are in the second hour, this is the share hour, or donation hour, make sure that you also hit the donate button when you go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage. That's for the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. You wanted it, and you have subscribed to it, and you have supported it, and we still need your support. Neely Fuller and myself are not compensated, from that. This is from you, and all the proceeds goes to the production of the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Thank you in advance for your support. Okay, going to the Gmails, Mr. Fuller, we have this. This comes from Nathan. He says this concerning DNA testing. He says, my question for you, Mr. Fuller, is, do you support submitting your DNA to 23andMe and Ancestry DNA for the purpose of helping to determine your ancestry?
Well, I don't know what the question means about support. It's something that people do. I am not interested in doing it because I say that what I said on the program last week. When I am asked about my ancestor, I don't have to have a whole museum for that and all like that. I have just one statement about my ancestor. My ancestor invented breathing. That's the way the code tells me to capsulize anytime anybody brings up anything about Neely Fuller's ancestor. Well, I say, they say, well, say something about your ancestor, where your ancestors from and what they did 2,000 years ago and 10,000 years ago. I said, I'm not going through all of that. I mean, that to me is wasted time. I need to talk about solving problems. But since you brought it up, I will tell the person, since you tell the person that brought it up, I will say, well, sir, since you brought it up about my ancestor, or what do I have to say about my ancestry, or whether or not I should get a test to find out, what type of blood is in my veins. I'm not going through all of that. I mean, as a research thing. Why? In order to do what? What am I going to do once I do that? What am I going to do with the information? I have enough information to do what I'm going to do about my ancestry. And that is my ancestor, or ancestors, if you want to make it plural. Because some people say that the creators of the universe, creator of the universe, if they want to put it in that context, I say my ancestor invented breathing. That's all I need to know about my ancestor. If you're just talking about ancestry, where did I come from? Where was my origin? I originated before the beginning of time. So it comes down to, when did time originate? Okay? If you're talking about Neely Fuller's ancestor or ancestry, when did time originate? In other words, what was it like before time ever existed? That's my origin. That's my ancestry. And if you start talking about what my ancestor did, I don't have to go and take out 10,000 history books and say, well, I found one of my ancestors and he helped to invent shoes. Or I found one of my ancestors and she helped to invent the concept of a lemon pie. All right? And then I look around and look for approval. I want somebody to approve of me on account of I have an ancestor that invented lemon pie 40,000 years ago. All right? And I look around and say, now, don't you approve of me now? Don't you feel, that I had an ancestor that accomplished something? My ancestor invented breathing, and I got evidence of that. Why? I'm breathing. And I'm breathing when I'm asleep. So I know I didn't have anything to do with it, because I don't even know that I'm breathing when I'm asleep. When I'm asleep, I don't know that I'm breathing. But I'm thankful that when I wake up, that I was breathing while I was asleep. Now, whatever put me in the universe invented that. That's evident right there. Since I didn't do it myself, and I haven't contacted anybody who says, Fuller, I'm the one that saw to it that you was breathing. You invented breathing? I don't think so. If you tell me that, I'm not going to believe you. I'm going to tell you that right now, because there were people before you that were breathing. So you didn't invent breathing. But my ancestor invented breathing. That's all I have to say about my ancestry. Now, we can go on and start talking about something else, like getting rid of white supremacy. See, I don't let nothing get in the way of that. So I figured out the white supremacists have a lot to do with, say, well, Fuller, I can show you some respect if you can show me where your ancestor did anything that is noteworthy. I say, oh, that's simple. My ancestor invented breathing. So how about that? You going to beat that? I don't think so. So let's go on and talk about what we're going to talk about solving the system of white supremacy now. Because we've taken care of that ancestor thing in one sentence. My ancestor invented breathing. That's black history.
That's black history. Okay.
Yeah, the whole thing in one sentence, 4 words.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess that got his question answered there. What line am I on?
I hope so.
Okay. Okay. Line number 1, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Bear in mind, we're up against a break, so we might have to go into the after break. But anyway, what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
I just want to share an aspect I went through in regards to education. I went and got my advanced degree, i.e. master's degree. And when I got it, coworkers were asking what I was going to do with it, why did I get it. My higher-ups, the managers, they were wanting me to come to them to tell them what I wanted to do, i.e. beg for promotion or beg for more work. And I wasn't doing it. And it bothered me. They kept on me or whatever. Then one day I realized my degree was not mine. And I was telling other black people about it. They were asking, why is it not yours? I said, well, because they call it a master's degree. We are living on the plantation. Mr. Fuller will say, oh, we're prisoners of war. But if we look at it as a plantation, my master's degree is a degree for the masters where I'm supposed to do more work for them.
Wow.
So I wanted to get Mr. Fuller's perspective on that if I kind of went in the right direction with that.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, in the system of white supremacy, non-white people are prisoners of war. We're not, running around trying to keep from being captured. We were captured before we were born. We were born in prison. If you're a person, black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, a person of color, you were born in the system of white supremacy. It was already established and running smoothly at the time you were born. That applies to everybody who's on the planet now. All right? Maybe before, maybe millions of years ago, maybe no. But anybody who's breathing on this planet now of color was born in the prison system called the system of white supremacy. So therefore, anything that you do in the prison, whether it's in the machine shop or the prison hospital or in the prison cell or out there in the prison yard, it comes under the white supremacist authority. If I invent something, it belongs to the prison master. If I play a song, that song really belongs to the prison master. If I do a work of art, it's not mine because I'm not mine. I don't belong to me. I belong to racist man and racist woman, the prison masters. The entire world for a non-white person is a plantation. We've never left it. We need to dismantle the plantation. There's no way to run from it. You got to actually dismantle it from where you are, because you can't be anywhere else. You have to do it from where you are, because there's no place else to go. You can't go to the moon unless they take you there. And if they can take you there, it means you're under their authority there too. All right? Anywhere that a black person wants to go who is already a prisoner of war, the white supremacist has to allow them to go there and show them how to get there. And the white supremacists, of course, will be there when you get where you're going, because they don't let you go nowhere that they haven't been. Okay? And are there now. Okay? That's what white supremacy means, supreme. Okay? So, therefore, anything that you invent, it goes to the white supremacists anyway.
Okay.
It doesn't make any difference how much money you make.
All right.
The white supremacists, right now, they dump money on a lot of black people. A lot of black people have billions of dollars, all right? And there will be more coming down the pipe. And you get those billions of dollars if you can. But always keep in mind, they can take it back anytime they get ready. Why? Because they already got you. That's why.
Okay, got to leave it there. TalkTainmentradio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentradio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. More of your Gmails and more comments from Mr. Fuller, including his book. All that and more coming up next on talktainmentradio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. Okay, talktainmentradio.com. We go where you go. You can send the talktainmentradio.com app to your cell or to your radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And we are discussing, the on-topic discussion today is the chickens have come home to roost, a statement made by Malcolm X. In particular, why white people are killing white people in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. You can call in now at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can also hear the show in its entirety on the replay by going to facebook.com/Talktainment, and the show will be there. You can hear the replay. And lastly, you can view the show, the live broadcast of the show, by going to the YouTube channel. Type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar and type in the word radio, and then scroll down to Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube, and you can watch the entire broadcast. Hit the like and share button. And since we are in the second hour, you can go to the talktainmentradio.com homepage and hit the donate button, because you will be donating to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Thank you in advance for your donations, and thank you for donating in the past for the continued support of that. Neely Fuller Jr. and myself are not compensated, from this, so your donations keep it going. Okay, Mr. Fuller, so you have a Gmail. This comes from Dominic, and he says this: during the show dated 2/14 last week, Mr. Fuller gave a codified response about what he would say about a work of art. At the end, he said there's a reason for having this codified response. Mr. Fuller, at your nearest opportunity, could you explain what is the reason for having this codified response when asked about a work of art? Thank you, Dominic.
Well, a work of art is, I guess, first of all, you describe or you define what art is, and then you come up with a reason for saying, well, this is a work of art, and any work of art that a non-white person is involved in, whatever the art is, depending on what you call art, A-R-T, does it help in some way, directly, indirectly, to cause a person to think, speak, and or act to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? Why a work of art? Well, why not a work of art? Since everything that a prisoner of war and all non-white people in the system of white supremacy are prisoners of war, anything that a prisoner of war does is supposed to be designed with it in mind to replace that prison system, that bogus prison system, that prisoner of war system, that system of racism, with a better system. And a better system, since racism is all about non-justice, is to replace that non-just system with a just system. Justice meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that's whether it's a work of art or in science and medicine, or if you're studying history, you should be thinking about immediately if someone mentions the word history, like this is supposed to be Black History Month, and you're going to show a work of art in Black History Month, you should be able to look at that so-called work of art, if that's what is required, something that you look at. So when you look at it, you say, now, how does this help me to think about replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? Otherwise, why are you calling it a work of art? Even if it's just a painting of a tree, it's supposed to inspire you in some way to change from what is now your circumstances to circumstances that are much better, or the way that they should have been in the first place. Because all interaction between people now on this planet in the system of white supremacy is something that needs changing from what it is to what it should be. And that is a system of justice, which no one who is breathing now has ever experienced. Because since the beginning of white supremacy, for sure, you can't have white supremacy and justice on the same planet at the same time. So no one has ever experienced a system that guaranteed that no person was mistreated and guaranteed that every person that needed constructive help got it at the time and place that he or she needed it. So a work of art, in answer to the question, should help directly or indirectly to cause a person to think, speak, and or act to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Otherwise, what's the point in having that work of art? Mm-hmm. Some people say, well, you have art for art's sake. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. I mean, art's sake. Well, what is art's sake? It raises another question. Art's sake for doing what? And let the person who raises that question answer the question. Mm-hmm. All right?
Okay. Now, in your research or studies or wherever you get your information, even if you just think this, has there ever been a time when when the world was at balance where justice existed?
Not in recorded history. I have found nothing, because I've always found most of recorded history that I've looked, almost all of it, is about some type of fighting. That's the point most of history that's been picked out to talk about. Great warriors. Most of the people that I was taught about in my 8th grade class were people who were in what they call the warrior class. Mm-hmm. That made up history. I was taught about a play called Macbeth. The only thing I remember about the play Macbeth, I remember 2 lines, even today. The only thing I remember about Shakespeare's play, Macbeth, a very prominent play that they have reenactments of it on the stages all over the place.
Yes.
The book is, Shakespeare's writings on Macbeth. I mean, it's been passed down through generations. I only remember 2 lines from Macbeth. One is, Macbeth, Macbeth, beware Macduff. Now, why is Macbeth bewaring of Macduff? It's because evidently Macduff is going to do Macbeth some harm. All right? So that tells me something right there. Why is it that I remember that as one of the lines from Macbeth, one of the 2 lines? Now, what's the other line I remember? I think it's from Macbeth, but it's, is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? That's the quote. Is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? A dagger? Now, what is a dagger used for? Well, a dagger is usually not used for building anything. A dagger is usually used to destroy a person.
Killing people.
killing people. Now, why is it that out of everything in Macbeth, even to this day, 2018, and I finished grade school, elementary school, and high school back in the 1940s, all right? Why is it that that's the only thing I remember from Macbeth? It's because the whole environment of history, as taught to me, was about killers. Julius Caesar was a mass killer. He was known to be a great, general. Not just an emperor. Not an emperor that built things, but an emperor that destroyed things for the most part. He built to destroy. And there was another one, a great general, that they told me about, taking up prime time in the classroom, Alexander the Great. And they told me that Alexander the Great conquered so many lands and killed so many people that when he finally got to a place that presumably was North Africa, where a city was named after him called Alexandria, I think, that he looked and saw the desert. If I recall correctly, one of my teachers said, Alexander the Great, a young general, he was very young, sat down and cried, looking out at the desert, because he said there were no more worlds to conquer. It didn't look like it was anybody out there. So you can't conquer people if they don't exist. I don't think he went far enough into the desert to find the people. Mm-hmm. But just looking out at what he saw was a desert, he said, well, I don't think there's anybody out there. So if there's nobody out there, there's no point in me going there, because what I do is kill people. I conquer people. I destroy things. So it must not be out there anything for me to destroy. And then young Alexander the Great sat down and cried.
Wow.
According to what the teachers told me. So all I have ever been taught about history is about all of the great people, General Patton, General Grant, General Eisenhower, Adolf Hitler, General Montgomery, were people who were in the killing business. All right? And these were the heroes. Now, every now and then, somebody will mention somebody like George Washington Carver or Jonas Salk with the Salk vaccine. They said that a man named Jonas Salk invented something that cured polio, if I recall correctly. Sometimes I get things mixed up, the names and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
But I think that that's the person's name. But I think more people remember Julius Caesar than remember Jonas Salk. I think Julius Caesar is made more of a historical hero than Jonas Salk.
For killing?
Yes. There are a lot of doctors, that cured people of things, a lot of scientists whose names I will never know. I'll say, well, who came up with this type of thing or this type of thing? And somebody say, well, Dr. So-and-so. I never heard that doctor's name until I asked about it. But I will hear about all the great killers all the time because they keep making movies about them.
Yeah.
Hercules, somebody who's in the killing business, everybody who has a sword. You go in any city and you look at the statues. General Robert E. Lee, somebody who is a killer, somebody who's known to kill people, okay? And taking up prime real estate, building expensive statues, sometimes with people that don't have shelter at the base of the statue in a tent. Now, they don't have a place to stay, but that statue costs a lot of money. How come you couldn't spend that money giving that person a shelter?
Or even,
how about that question?
Yeah, or even when you pointed out a few shows ago, which I did not know, was the statue of the Oscar. When you mentioned that the Oscar had a sword in it. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there was a sword on the statue that they honor people in movies. I think it's
doesn't have on a stitch of clothes, but got a sword.
Got a sword.
In place of what? The phallus.
Wow.
Presuming Oscar was a male.
Yes.
All right. You know, that's what they call a masculine name. So presuming that Oscar is a male, he has the sword in front of his sexual organs, which means, hey, this is the real deal. My sexual organs reproduce people, but this sword kills people. Think about that.
Which I never saw until you pointed out. TalkTameRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTameRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and it is at this time where we have Mr. Fuller talk about that wonderful book. Mr. Fuller?
Yes. The textbook for victims of white supremacy, a compensatory counter-racist code. Anything that's successful has a code. I mean, people talk about plumbing codes, fire codes, building codes. Every time they have a big fire, they said, well, they had a fire over there at the warehouse, and when they investigated, the electrical system wasn't up to code. And that's why the warehouse burned down, because the electrical system over there wasn't up to code, and as a result of it, when they had a surge of electricity, it started a fire, and as a result of the fire that came from the code violation, the wiring would not handle the surge, so the place caught fire and the warehouse burned down. So when we rebuild the warehouse, make sure that the warehouse this time is up to code standards. And sometimes firefighters will go into a building and say, this place is not up to code. You don't have a fire stairwell, and you should have one here. With this many people here, you don't have a fire exit. Where's the exit? This place is not up to code. So you're going to have to get some more money or whatever you have to get and build a stairwell where the people who come to this floor will have a way of getting out of the building in case there will be a fire. Sooner or later, there might be a fire. So bring the place up to code. Now, it's the same way with solving the race problem. I say that's the missing link. The individual person doesn't have a code. The individual victim, something you can rely on. I mean, on your job and everything else that will do the best under the circumstances that you're in. There's no such thing as a complete code till all the problems are solved. But we do need a code. I say that's the missing link. We have a lot of slogans. You know, we come up with slogans about every 2 or 3 years, different types of slangs and slogans. That's not a code. That's the beginning, maybe, of a code. But you have to have ingredients, meaning do this. A code is about doing something that will do what? Solve a problem. So what I've tried to do with the textbook for victims of white supremacy is come up with suggestions for problem solving, just those 2 words, on page after page, what to say and what to do, because problem solving is all about saying and doing.
Yes, sir.
What not to say, what not to do, what to say, and what to do.
And where can we get the book?
And you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
Okay.
And what will come up on the screen is the method for ordering.
All righty. Let's go quickly to the phone
Always
lines. Line number 1, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Thank you for taking my call. Mr. Fuller, given that February 21, 1965 was the day that Malcolm X was assassinated in New York, my question is, do you remember your thoughts? Where were you that day when that assassination happened? And what are your thoughts, if any, about Malcolm X and his work? And was he an effective spokesperson in your view? I'm just curious to know what were your thoughts when you learned about the assassination of Malcolm X 53 years ago today, and just curious to know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, my thoughts was that it shouldn't have happened, the assassination. That was my first thought. But I said to myself at the time what I figured was going to happen, because I said any time a black person is effective or seems to be really going to be effective against racism, the white supremacists make their move. And one of the moves they make, and one of the easiest ones to make, is to start arguments among their victims. In other words, get a prison riot started. That's an old technique, all right? Divide and conquer. I'm not the first one who said that, but I mean, great generals and great politicians figured that one out a long time ago. You got an opponent, one of the best ways to get rid of that opponent is to get them to fighting among themselves, squabbling about, whatever, all right? And do it any kind of way that you can do it. Do it any kind of way, spread a rumor. I think that's what happened in Rwanda. I've heard that that's exactly what happened. 800,000 people in less than 3 weeks, black people hacked each other to death. Males, females, little children. In the 1990s, in one small place, Rwanda. People killing each other about a rumor. A plane went down, and then the rumor started. And I said immediately, since you asked me my thoughts about Malcolm X, I said, oh, okay, a rumor. Now, who are the best rumor mongers on the planet? The white supremacists. They are the best disseminators of information. They can spread information, like wildfire in a few minutes. All right? True or false. And I understand that Rwanda massacre 800,000 people. Just running around, with knives, machetes mostly, from what I understand. That's mostly what they had. Something that's made to cut trees and whatnot, and limbs and whatnot, a farm tool for the most part, but can be used razor sharp to kill people. And that's what black people, Rwanda, in the 1990s, 800,000 people in less than 3 weeks. Black people slaughtering each other. Now, the death of Malcolm X, the way I looked at it, old trick, regardless how it comes about, is still a trick, because that's the result.
That's the result. Okay. Thank you, caller. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. TalkTameRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.